The Colorado Buffaloes lost their Week 7 game to Kansas State, but I think it was a coaching problem, not a player problem.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. Joining me today, as he does every week, is Scott Procter. Scott, the Buffs lost a close one. It was, I would say you could classify that as a heartbreaker in the sense of they had a lead for all of like 30 seconds, and then Kansas State charged down the field and scored in about 3 plays. But that was exactly the problem, in my opinion. I think a lot of things went wrong for Colorado, and we're going to get to all those things, right? Travis Hunter goes down early with an injury. I thought he was going to come back. I think he wanted to come back, but obviously probably not in his best interest to return. Jimmy Horn goes down with an injury. Omarion Miller later goes down with an injury. Shiloh Sanders, to quote his father / coach Deion Sanders, played horrible. I think he had a 28 PFF grade. He had a lot of missed tackles, and I think the most infamous one is the one on DJ Giddens and him one-on-one in the gap, which, I mean, most people aren't tackling a running back one-on-one in open space. But when you fall to your knees and you're the son of Deion Sanders, a lot of people are going to recognize you. It's just, that's the territory it comes with. Yeah. And I think there was just, like I said in my open, some coaching issues. And I'm going to go through what I felt was wrong. And Scott, you could feel free to jump in, disagree, whatever. One, after Travis Hunter went out, the defense refused to change up anything, right? They're riding with their corners. They're going to man coverage consistently, and it didn't work, right? Preston Hodge gave up, I think it was 5 catches for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. The rest of the corners, DJ McKinney, he also gave a handful of catches and yards. Realistically, the run defense was not what we've seen all year. That was the reason I picked Colorado to win. Was I thought their run defense was dramatically improved, which it still is. I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but I thought it was good enough to sort of clamp this offense down. And these were the catches allowed. Hodge, 5 for 84 yards, 2 touchdowns. McKinney, 4 for 39 yards. And then Cameron Craig, 3 for 50 yards. So I didn't love the defense's inability or lack of willingness to switch things up. And then offensively, I didn't love the last play call. I didn't love, which I don't really know what Michael Welch's situation was, and maybe you could jump in and talk about that. Didn't love not seeing him. I think he's the best running back, or even Isaiah Augusta. I think he's the best running back. One of those two, whoever is available, are better behind this offense line than Dallin Hayden is. I just don't think Dallin Hayden has shown that he could produce with this offensive line. And then Shedeur Sanders was taking too many sacks. But talk about my coaching problems take. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your stances?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly disagree. I mean, I wrote yesterday in my story, my Sunday morning story, my overreactions from the game, kind of deciding what's a real overreaction, what's a not from, Colorado's loss to Kansas State on Saturday night. My first point actually in that story was that Colorado got outcoached. I mean,
so you agree with that part? You agree with that part?
I mean, like you mentioned, part of the reason that I actually picked Kansas State to win this game last week was partly because of that reason. Chris Klieman is one of the best coaches in college football.
Right.
He engineered, in part, North Dakota State becoming one of the best FCS programs, if not the premier FCS program. And obviously, he's done pretty much nothing but win since he's gotten to Kansas State. So that really wasn't a surprise to me. Kansas State outcoaching Colorado, but there were still some glaring issues in the coaching aspect. You mentioned some of it. Pat Shermer, I'll start with him. The fact that Colorado running backs had 10 rushing attempts on Saturday night is completely unacceptable.
Did we learn? We learned nothing.
Especially when Kansas State never led by more than 14 points, right? And Shedeur says after the game, it's hard to run when you're behind. And that's true. And that's just the fact of the matter. But it shouldn't be impossible to run when you're behind, especially when you're only trailing by 2 touchdowns a max. Really, you're only trailing by 1 score for most of that game. So, again, to only have 10 carries by a running back is completely unacceptable. And you mentioned Michael Welch. I don't get that part of it either. I tweeted during the Colorado State game, which was Michael Welch's first extended action, and obviously he looked really good. Granted, it was against a lesser opponent. But I tweeted during that game that for the second straight year, Colorado's best running back is a true freshman. And that's how I feel about it. And I don't really understand how or why the running back carries opportunities are being divvied up the way they are. Dallin Hayden is a good running back. I think he's a good player. He obviously wasn't good on Saturday night. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. But when you have backs who Deion Sanders says can get after it, multiple of them, you see Dallin Hayden struggling out the gate to find holes, to create space.
Mm-hmm.
Give some of those other guys opportunities. And I don't know if Welch has continued to struggle in pass protection, because that's something that Coach Prime has mentioned, in previous weeks, as to why some of the other running backs who fans clamor for haven't been given opportunities. And maybe that's part of it. And it's a valid reason, right? If you can't protect Shedeur Sanders, who's dropping back 40 plus times in a game, it's going to be hard for you to see the field, even if you are a talented ball carrier. But nonetheless, in that type of game where physicality was at an all-time high, where Kansas State was clearly doing whatever they wanted to do on the ground, you would love to see Michael Welch and his bruising style get more opportunities. And the same can be said for Isaiah Augustus, who I think pretty much every time he gets opportunities, good things happen, whether he's catching the ball in the backfield or obviously, toting the rock. So offensively, Pat Shurmur wasn't his best game. And the same can be said for Robert Livingston, who I've been very complimentary of, right?
Right.
Colorado has a lead, takes the lead with 3 minutes and 12 seconds left. They're up 4 points. So a field goal can't even kill you. The only thing that can hurt you in that situation is a touchdown.
How many seconds did they lead, Scott? How many seconds?
All it took was 51 seconds. All it took was 3 plays for Kansas State to go 84 yards and score a touchdown and win the game, and obviously that's a product of sending pressure in that situation, leaving your corners on an island and man coverage in that situation. You play those type of games, those are the results you get in those situations, right? So that was a mistake on Robert Livingston's part, right? You would like to see off coverage, keep everything in front of you. Again, the last thing you can allow in that situation is a ball to go over your head for a big play, and that's exactly what happened. Again, with all those bad things, with all the injuries, with Travis leading the second quarter, Jimmy not playing most of the game, Amarian Miller suffering an awful injury, and I'm praying for him that he can make a speedy recovery. Terrell Timmons also went out late in that game. 4 receivers you lose in the midst of a game, and you still have a 4-point lead with 3 minutes left. That's impressive, but it also just makes it that much more heartbreaking that you weren't able to come up with that victory over a top 20 team, which they're able to hold on. Colorado was probably sitting inside the top 25 here this morning, but they're not. But also, too, it's not the end of the world, right? Again, I picked Kansas State to win this game last week because I believe they're the best team in the Big 12. I know BYU whooped them and they're undefeated. I know Iowa State is still undefeated, and I think at this point in the top 10 of the AP poll, which is impressive for them. I think both of those teams are going to suffer a couple of losses in Big 12 play before it's over with. And if that's the case, Colorado still has a very viable path, in my opinion, to the Big 12 title game, because there are some very winnable games coming up here, assuming health, assuming Travis Hunter is back as soon as this weekend and some of those other guys. But it's a tough loss, but I said last week that I think these are the 2 best teams in the conference. Obviously, you look at record, that doesn't bear that out, but as far as what I see with my 2 eyes this season, these are the 2 best teams in the conference. And I think Saturday's matchup kind of echoed that. And we'll see what happens here over the next few weeks. But no time to panic for Colorado Buffaloes. It's a tough loss, but still a lot of football to be played. But we'll check the status. Obviously, Coach Prime didn't have an update on Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn Jr., some of those injured guys after the game. But we'll hear from him tomorrow, Tuesday morning, and we'll get more of an update on those guys.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of things. And the one thing that really stood out to me was when Shedeur Sanders says it's hard to run when you're behind. Dallin Hayden got 5 first quarter carries, which he ran for a total of 8 yards.
There was a concerted effort by Shurmur out the gate first quarter to run the ball. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say like 4 of their first 6 offensive plays were just straight up handoffs. Right.
And then he gets 2 second quarter carries, which, mind you, in the second quarter, by the time Kansas State scored, there was 1 minute and 52 seconds left. So the entire second quarter, it was 7-7. And Down Hayden's last carry came at 14:19 remaining. And then Isaiah Augustive, his first carry, came with 22 seconds remaining in the third quarter, and then he got two more carries the rest of the game. And so I don't understand this like thought process where it's like we were behind, we couldn't run the ball. Like it's just not true for starters. Two, we've seen how running the ball effectively opens things up. And so we haven't called him out specifically, but typically, and you could attest to this, Scott, barring a head coach vetoes something, the position coach is in charge of picking who starts and or plays, right? So Coach Flea, in this instance, for some reason, has chosen not to ride with Michael Welch. He has chosen to ride with Dallin Hayden. And this isn't a knock on Dallin Hayden. This isn't saying Dallin Hayden shouldn't be a part of this offense. But what we have seen from each of these backs this year, Dallin Hayden has proven to be the least effective behind this group of offensive linemen, which, I mean, it sucks to say that this offensive line's not entirely better than last year's, but they are somewhat better, right? They're better in the run game. But you have to make plays with what you're given. And Dallin Hayden has proven not to be able to do that. He averages just 3 yards per carry, only has 96 rushing yards on the season, but he leads the team in rushing attempts. So obviously something's not working there. And then defensively, I think you hit on it. Robert Livingston's worst game as a coordinator thus far. Me and you are both really high on him. I still think he's probably, barring a total collapse down the stretch here, if like the defense were to start giving up 50 a game, I think he's one of the hires of the season, one of the best hires of the season. And I think this Colorado team just sort of reverted back to everything that had been wrong with them in past weeks, right? Which was not running the ball effectively, not even trying to run the ball. Defensively, not adjusting when needed, right? I think that was the worst second half performance on defense that we've seen from this Colorado team. Just in general, obviously, points wise, Kansas State put up 17 second half points, which is not something that this team's accustomed to. So Kansas State climbing, they know what they're doing. This Colorado team, not their best showing. Obviously, injuries played a factor. I don't know if Shiloh Sanders was ready to play, and I do think that he played a pivotal role in helping. But the defensive front wasn't good enough against the run. You don't want your safeties to be in one-on-one situations with the best running back in college football or one of the best running backs in college football. That's not going to be setting anyone up for success. So I think this loss is more on the coaches. If I were to take a positive out of it, though, and Coach Prime said this to the team in a video whenever their most recent practice was, he said, we played one of our worst games and we still had a chance to win it. I think they played their second worst game this season behind Nebraska, and they should have won, right? I don't think they should have given up a touchdown late. So a lot to be positive about, even though they lost. We're going to be more positive starting right now because, as me and Scott both alluded to, Colorado controls their own destiny, and we're going to talk about that when we come back. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at LinkedIn. If you or your small business are hiring, LinkedIn is the perfect place to do it. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's talk destiny, Scott. Let's talk about the future. Let's forecast it. Let's get weird. No, I'm just kidding. Let's just be realistic right now. The Big 12 is probably the most open conference in college football right now, or at least the Power Four conferences, right? The SEC is, I think there's a lot of good teams in the SEC, but I think it's going to come down to Texas, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and maybe someone else along those lines, right? The ACC, I think it's Clemson's conference to lose. And then
you're Miami?
Miami as well. You're right. Sorry. A little oversight.
Do they play in the regular season?
Let's look that up. I'm glad you brought that up, though. That would have been a massive blunder. They don't. So Clemson has Yeah, so it's between those two, though, right? It's not open. It's not like Virginia or Louisville is going to make a run. I don't think
Right.
Pitt's going to
No.
make a run. But the Big 12, I look at the standings right now, and I think there's about 5 to 6 teams where it's like, hey, if you told me that you went to the future and said, hey, this team won, I'd be like, makes sense, right? We have BYU currently topping the charts, Iowa State right behind them, Texas Tech behind them, Kansas State behind them, Arizona State sitting at 5-1, taking advantage of Cam Rising and the Utah Utes, which Cam Rising is out indefinitely. So I think that really changes unless Isaac Wilson really steps up, I think Utah is no longer a contender. And then Cincinnati's one spot above Colorado, and then Colorado is in there at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spot. So I think they control their own destiny, Scott. Realistically, I look at the rest of their schedule, and of the games on the schedule that I'm worried about, one, Arizona, because we don't know Travis's status, and we'll find that out tomorrow.
Yeah.
If they don't have Travis, and I think we're not going to do predictions because I don't feel comfortable predicting until I know Travis's status because he's that much of a key player. But I'll tell you what, right now, this would be my prediction. If Travis Hunter plays, they're going to win. If he's not going to play, I don't think Colorado wins this game against Arizona. I think Tetrone McMillan is too much to handle. But other than that, other than Arizona and Texas Tech, I think Colorado, I'd pick them to win in every single game. Those 2 games that I mentioned, it'd really be a coin toss for me. So if you go into the final week of the college football season with 1, maybe 2 conference losses, you're still in the mix to play in your conference title, which therefore means you are still in the mix for the college football playoff. Scott, talk to me.
Absolutely, man. I agree with a lot of what you said, man. I mean, again, I wrote about it yesterday in my overreactions column. Go check that out on coloradoan.com if you haven't already. But, everything this team wants is still in front of them, including the Big 12 title game, right? I mean, you mentioned, the schedule, and I said last week, depending on how Colorado looked on Saturday night, which to me, there were some blunders, but they looked like the top of the Big 12 team, even in the loss. Yeah. I said last week that every game pretty much the rest of the way, I like Colorado's chances, and then I'd probably be picking Colorado in every game the rest of the way. Again, assuming, I saw good things on Saturday, which I did in spurts, although it resulted in a loss. And I'll even go a step further. Actually, I'll say this real quickly too, that I realized this yesterday, but every Big 12 team has played 3 conference games so far this year, and Colorado is leading the conference in total points through those 3 conference games with 114. BYU is right behind them, and Texas Tech is obviously third. There are only 3 teams to score 100-plus points through 3 games of Big 12 play. So you have a Colorado team that's pretty much scoring 28 points in their sleep, right? And if you have a defense that we still feel all right about, led by Robert Livingston, you're going to be in every single game in the Big 12 the rest of the way. I'll even go a step further to say that, obviously, I just said that I like Colorado in every game the rest of the way. How about take a look at Kansas State's schedule the rest of the way? Because, again, I think, like I said, I think these are the 2 best teams in the Big 12. Kansas State obviously goes on the road at West Virginia this week. They're a 3-point favorite. That's a tough place to play. I like them to win that game. After that, they have Kansas, which is a win, Houston, Arizona State, in Manhattan, which will be a hell of a game. But Kansas State has them at home. They have Cincinnati after that, at home as well. And then they finish on the road at Iowa State, which, again, is a toss-up game. But I can see Kansas State winning that. I think it's within the realm of possibility that Kansas State runs the table the rest of the way. And the same for Colorado. And those 2 teams meet up again in the Big 12 title game. I think that's completely on the table. And I think that would just be a fascinating storyline for college football, for the Big 12 as a whole. That's something that, I can just envision happening. Also, we have to say that those projections assume Travis Hunter's full health and his return this weekend, because I agree with you. If Travis Hunter isn't out there on the field this weekend in particular, with T.D. McMillan on the other side, to me, the best wide receiver in all of college football, that's going to be a problem. And I don't know how I feel about that matchup if Travis Hunter isn't available and fully healthy and ready to go. So we have a few days until we know his status. Hopefully we learn more tomorrow. Hopefully we learn tomorrow that he's just, ready to go, and they held him up for precautionary reasons last week, because it didn't look like he wanted to go back in the game, that he was still engaged and locked in. So to me, it kind of seemed like it was maybe more of a head injury thing. The same with Jimmy Horn Jr., that it was kind of a head thing that they just wanted to, be precautionary about. That would kind of be the best case scenario for this week and moving forward for those guys' health. But Again, assuming you get those guys back as soon as possible, Colorado's set up really well here the rest of the way. Assuming they learn from this loss on Saturday and continue to play good football, complementary football, balanced football on all three phases.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, right? All the top teams in the Big 12 have to play against another top team. And I think that's where things get interesting. I think BYU probably has the easiest remaining schedule. If I had to just sort of eyeball it right now, they have Oklahoma State at home. They go to UCF, which will be a tough game just to sort of, that's a really far game for them to go from Utah to Orlando. Then they have the Holy War against Utah, which I think Utah's done. Assuming Isaac Wilson isn't like going to turn into the second coming of his.
Yeah, you're right, bro. Their schedule is pretty sweet the rest of the way. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Kansas at home. Arizona State's a tough game. And then they finish with Houston. So I would right now they have one team on their schedule. Two teams that are above 500. And of those two teams, one of them just lost their starting quarterback for an indefinite amount of time. So who knows what they're going to be. Sure. I look at Iowa State. Iowa State, if they're that good, we'll find out because they will be tested. They have UCF, Texas Tech next week, or their next game, Kansas, which is what it is. Cincinnati's a lot better than people realize, Utah, and then they finish with Kansas State. So if Iowa State really is that team, we'll find out. And I think that game between Kansas State and Iowa State at the end of the schedule there, I think that's basically a semifinal game, if you will.
I think the winner of that game, and in the title game, sure, I agree.
So for Colorado, I don't hate their schedule. I don't hate their slate, right? They have an Arizona team that's figuring things out, a Cincinnati team that I don't think they're that good yet. We'll find out. Texas Tech is a tough test. Utah, we said it already. Kansas is terrible, and then Oklahoma State's not good. So Colorado controls their own destiny. Obviously, you just got to do the easiest thing in sports, which is win, right? No, I think Colorado just has to make sure that they learn from their mistakes, and I think we've seen that they can. Right after they lost to Nebraska, they went out and beat their rival Colorado State by a large margin. So Colorado has a chance to make some noise, and we're going to talk about who they need to. Obviously, they need everyone to be healthy, but we're going to talk about some key players, some key injuries, and how that impacts the team when we come back. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by Game Time. Let me tell you about Game Time because they have the best deals on all your ticket needs. And they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. They have all-in prices that has a toggling feature that shows up the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat on the app before you buy, and they have their lowest price guarantee, which will credit you 110% of the difference if it's not the lowest price. So your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service in the service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, Scott, Colorado got a little beat up in that game. Let's talk about some of the players who are injured and some of the players who we are no longer quite sure on what their impact is. Starting with, this is a random non-injury update, but it seems like Yakiri Walker is no longer with the team. I'm not really sure what his official status is. The last time I checked the roster, he's still there. But on Twitter, there's a screenshot of him saying he does not play for Colorado anymore. So that's interesting. So Hank Zelinkus is the center. I know you tweeted something interesting before the game, which was Justin Mayers was working with Ryan Staub as the second team center. So obviously that seems to be a little bit somewhat confirmed, right? We haven't had an announcement from the team yet, but that seems to be pretty fairly straightforward. We'll go with the positives, or at least the positive that I remember. Cordell Russell, he's going to make his debut, I imagine, right? Coach Prime said he's healthy, he's ready. For those of you not familiar, he goes by the nickname Baby T.O., and he's a mammoth of a person. He is 6'4", 220 pounds. The dude is gigantic. So obviously we've yet to see him play at the college level. I don't think he played at all during his time at TCU, but he was a highly sought after recruit who will be making an impact. Okay, let's get to the injuries. Omarion Miller. I believe it was somewhat reported that he has a broken ankle. And assuming he's not superhuman and will be back in the ensuing months, I think he's probably done for the year with a broken ankle. Obviously, depending on how far Colorado makes it, maybe things could change, but that's a big hit because he had quietly, I think, which just is crazy to say because I think the USC game was like a welcome to college football game for him. I think this was his breakout game. He had eight catches.
He was on Saturday, man.
Yeah, he was going crazy. 8 catches for 145 yards, 18.1 yards per catch. Then we also had Jimmy Horn go out with an injury, and then Travis Hunter. And Jimmy Horn, obviously, he's a speedster. I would hate to tackle him in open field. Probably wouldn't be able to clip his ankle if I tried to tackle him in open field. And Omarion Miller is a great playmaker. But Travis Hunter, I don't know if you remember, Scott, or if you saw it because you were at the game. On the television, ESPN showed Colorado's impact players, and it literally was just a picture of Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball. So this leads me to my take, and we talked about this off air, and I'll just get to it because I know you don't see eye to eye with me on this, and I know a lot of people don't. I think Colorado, assuming Travis Hunter is healthy enough to return at least sometime this year, I don't know what his injury is or the extent of it. I think they need to start picking and choosing when they use him differently. I think the more he's out there, the more that it leads him to be more susceptible to injury. Sorry, that was a tough sentence to get out. It makes him more susceptible to injury, which obviously injuries are a part of football. But when you're playing triple the amount of snaps as everyone else, I think you have to just be smart. And he's the best player in college football. Use him wisely. For those of you who are worried about the Heisman race, me and Scott talked about this, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Travis Hunter's Heisman hopes, barring an absolute explosion, are done, right? He's currently has the 7th best odds on FanDuel behind guys like Ashton Genty's the favorite, Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik from Clemson, and Jalen Milroe are
they
all
got Klubnik up there now.
they got the Clubster up there. So, but yeah, I just don't think it's not worth the risk. Now, I'm not saying he can only play, say, 70 snaps and then he's done. I just think that they need to pick and choose how they use him better. Give him more breaks. Scott, what do you think about these injuries? Also, Deion Hayes has been out for a couple weeks now. I think Colorado could really use him in the run defense, just based off experience and sort of what he brings to the table. Let's talk about injuries, though. Let's start with Travis. That's obviously the most important one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get to your limiting his snaps taken in a second here. But as far as the injuries, I mean, this is the deepest receiving core in college football, arguably, right? If there's one position on this team that could handle some injuries, it's probably the receiving group. It's probably Jason Phillips' room. So obviously, again, we don't know the extent of the injuries to Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn Jr., Terrell Timmons as well, who was hurt late.
That's right.
Yep. So we'll have to see what the diagnosis is on those injuries, but I don't think it's the end of the world, assuming you get one or two of those 3 guys back. Right? You still have Will Shepherd, he's had an up and down season, but he's very talented, right? He also made plays again.
He answered. He scored a touchdown right after the drop. 2 plays later.
Right? Short memory. You love to see that, right? Will Shepherd is a talented player. LeJonte Wester, the boy has scored in 5 straight games. He's got 7 touchdowns already this season. I said, before the season, he was the player I was most looking forward to seeing play this season. He's lived up to all the hype and then some. And then Draylen Miller, the true freshman, right, has continued to get opportunities and continue to make the most out of them. So, you got those 3 guys, and obviously there's depth behind them as well, some young guys. We'll see if Cordell gets on the field, makes his Buff debut as well. But again, assuming one of those 3 guys being Travis, Jimmy Horn Jr., Terrell Timmons Jr., assuming, 1 or 2 of those guys come back, I think the receiving core is still in good enough shape. But defensively is where you would feel, I think, Travis Hunter's lost the most, right? And we saw it. And I feel like Kansas State's approach of, right, when they took the ball with, about 3 minutes left, down 4 points, their first play was a deep shot, right, that almost hit. Mm-hmm. Avery Johnson dropped it right in the bucket and went right between Jace Brown's hand, right? The second play, they go DJ Giddings, 50-plus yards, wheel out of the backfield. Third play, they pretty much run that first play, they drive again, but to the other side. So yes. I think Travis Hunter being out of the game, they said, this is our chance. this is our chance to take a deep shot opportunity. And obviously they hit on one of them, which turned out to be the game-winning touchdown. So I think Travis Hunter, if he were to miss, he'd be obviously more missed on the defensive side of the ball. And that loss is amplified when, again, T-Mac, arguably the best receiver in the country, is going to be lining up against your defense on Saturday in Tucson. So again, the Buffs need Travis Hunter back, right? And obviously getting back Deion Hayes would be ideal too. But some of those edge guys have really stepped up.
Big day for
Green. BJ Green had 2 sacks, on Saturday, right? Arden Walker has continued to play well. Tajay McCoy has continued to play well. And they got some other guys as well. But to your take, right, about limiting Travis Hunter snaps, I just don't really buy that at this point, right? Maybe that's a decision you make coming into the season, but at this point in the season, when you're literally in the thick of the Big 12 title race, right? You got 6-7 games left of Travis Hunter's college football career, man. You gotta, if he's healthy and ready to go, he's gonna be wanting to play the 124 snaps that he averages every game. So that's what you gotta let him do, right? And the biggest reason why is because we've seen this team without Travis Hunter's services. Last year we saw him and it went all downhill, right? He goes out second quarter on Saturday and both sides of the ball were changed drastically. So for that reason, plenty of evidence of what this team looks like without Travis Hunter's services. And if you can help it, if he's healthy, he's got to be out there as much as he can.
Okay, counter question then, because you're not wrong. And I think the way I described it probably wasn't good enough. So this is what I think. I think his offensive snaps should be limited so that way he could help out the defense, because we both agree he's better on or the defense needs him more than the offense. Let's pretend LeJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn, Will Shepherd, and insert fourth receiver, it doesn't matter who, that they're clicking, right? Everything's fine. Would you be okay with Travis like maybe sitting out like 1 to 2 drives per quarter on offense so that way he's extra fresh on defense?
The way I would do it is if he on offense, that would be the time where you would give him a bit more rest. But it would be after he makes a big play, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he gets a 30-40 yard catch, you come out the rest of the series, right? You come out for at least until we pick up another first down, get you a couple plays. But again, he's so explosive too offensively, and again, he was missed offensively, right? I mean, this offense wasn't exactly humming on Saturday when Travis Hunter, left the game.
Yeah.
And again, he's just the type of guy, when you have somebody who can take a 5-yard hitch and take it the distance, or take a 3-step slant, make somebody miss, and take it to the field. You need that guy on the field as much as you can get him. So again, I don't really like setting up like you're going to sit this drive. I just don't really like that for this guy in particular. So I think again,
that's the hard part right here.
In the flow of the game, he gets 2 catches on the drive. Take him out for a few plays, so he's 100% rested for that next defensive series. But I don't think planning, drives or snaps for him to sit out is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and I totally. That's the hard part with the plan, though, because like my plan's not foolproof. It's just like a hypothesis, if you will. Like it's like if Travis Hunter plays less, will he be better throughout the game or less likely to get injured? And there's no perfect time to take him off the field, because you don't want to take the best player in college football off the field ever, right? But at the same time, I think the problem, and this goes back to coaching when we talked about this earlier in the game, the coaches need to decide that. So like Travis Hunter, I mean, great talent, seems like a great dude. He's never going to say, yeah, I want to come off the field. I think if given the choice, he would have played last game. I think if given the choice, he would have returned. I mean, we knew this last year. I think he wanted to return after, I think it was the Oregon game, right? And like he told Coach Prime, like, hey, I want to come back. And they were like, you're not ready. And he's like, I'm ready.
Before he eventually did against
Travis Hunter wants to play. We know that. So this is up to the adults in the room. I mean, Travis Hunter's an adult, but this is up for the adults in the room that are getting paid to make these decisions, to make the best decision on behalf of Travis. It's a tough decision to make. You guys comment below. Would you A, just let Travis run all game? B, sort of do what Scott and I sort of hypothesize right now, where it's just like you pick moments after a couple big catches, or C, do you just snap count them, which I think is probably the least effective way. I like B, Scott. I like your idea of this. And I think that's the best way to make my idea make sense, right? You don't want him to be off the field because it's like, oh, it's the third drive. He already played like 2 in a row now. But at the same time, you don't want him just aimlessly running around out there. So it's a really tough subject matter. I'm sure you guys will be ready to dive into this in the comment section. I appreciate you for hopping on the show, Scott. Tell the people where they can find you and what you're up to.
Go follow me on Twitter, right now known as X, right there at the handle below Scott Procter _. And as always, stay tuned on, my latest at thecoloradoin.com. We got new content dropping every single day, and we have you locked and loaded, ready for everything that happens on Saturday in Tucson for the Bucks matchup against Arizona. So appreciate you having me on as always, Kevin. It's fun as always.
Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in every single day. We are like 20 subscribers away from 6,000. So let's get there. Appreciate all the support, and I will see you guys tomorrow.